welcome everybody. We are joined by head coach Gary Smith. Coach, a tremendous result today that extended your unbeaten streak to 10 games, a record for the club. Tell us about it.
Yeah, very challenging. Having seen a considerable amount of this group, and we had the luxury really of watching a very strong St. Louis side come into the league and overpower a number of different teams. And that was our luxury, that we're 18, 17 games in, and there was a little bit more maybe to draw out of that, and certainly some qualities that we needed to be ready for. And the first period was extremely challenging, very, very competitive, I would say as competitive as we've had here. And the dynamic and the change at half time with Jacob coming on, I thought made a world of difference. Suddenly there was an individual who put some fear maybe into their back line with his pace. It certainly didn't help that the right back got booked immediately, but I thought that area of the field and that connection gave us a much needed boost and exciting look down that left hand side. And in the end, it was obviously a big part of us getting a tough result. And obviously Hanny's performance was world class again. It's almost like we say that every week now.
Thank you, Coach. We are going to open the floor for questions. Father, go ahead.
Coach. One of the differences, I guess, in the starting lineup today was seeing Randall Leal as part of that front three core instead of the midfield. How do you see him in that role, and can he play in both of those roles?
Yeah, at some point I've got to make a decision. What do we need to win the game? And Randall's shown over time, and certainly deserved his start tonight after his performance coming on against Toronto. Looked very bright, getting closer to himself and the way that we know he can affect games. But unfortunately, it just wasn't maybe the right game for him. And there were a couple of other guys in that first half that found the going very, very tough. The choice for Till to come off was forced with a slight problem. But the two changes at half time, predominantly Jacob, as I've already said, made a big difference. But that's no slight on Randall. Today is probably one of two games that we're going to play the same style and the same sort of difficulty, and the other one will be Rebel. Those two teams, it would seem now, have got that very aggressive style, and it served them extremely well. And doing well, being successful is about being adaptable. And today, by hook or by crook, we were able to overcome the challenge, and we keep moving.
Hani, his second hat-trick from the season. What similarities did you really draw tonight from his first one?
I don't actually remember the first one, but what I will say is, in times of need, and certainly when the game started to slow down a little bit, and I say a little bit because it was still played at an incredible speed, he's able to find time and space, and his quality and craft are another level to a lot of players. It was a difficult angle for the third one, but it was certainly probably the toughest of his goals, and it looked a real challenging angle for him, and the goalkeeper had played pretty well throughout the game. So that third goal was one that I think we all felt made a hell of a difference to the way the game was going to go.
Coach, I want to ask about how your team prepared for this game. St. Louis is a tough team. They're first in the Western Conference, I believe. Did you guys do anything special, like
recording in progress,
or anything, or and if so, how did that impact the performance throughout the game?
Yeah, there's always a build up to the games where we're looking at the other team and some of their trends and style. I don't think anything prepares you for running into that group live, and it's of course our first time playing St. Louis. Um, I would say the only thing that we were able to change, because it's very, very difficult to replicate their style. It's so forceful and front foot that you run the risk all the time of injury in training. But a couple of things we did try to do was just play quicker, play in tight areas and look at those connections. But also, what does it look like when that pressure's coming? Because the areas beyond that, they do such a good job of suffocating any sort of possession that you've normally got to miss that press out. And if you can do it with some quality, we decided that the best route and option was to use some pace and get down the sides of their centre backs. And in the end, that I think paid some dividends.
Gary, you said that you kind of feel like you talk about Hani every week. He just became the third player in league history to hit 50 goals and 30 assists in a 3-year stretch. At this point, he's been pretty rarefied air as far as production over this long of a period. What do you make of his ability every week to be essentially a matchup at this point?
I think you could tell, Ben, by the response, and Hani was brilliant, that it's almost something that you expect to happen now. And even I get caught up in that world where, well, of course he will, because he's that good. In reality, it does take an awful lot of hard work. It takes a lot of professionalism on his part. I would say he's up there with the amount of minutes played with our group. Our roster, which means that he's got to recover well, he's got to look after himself, he still has to get through the right diet of work in training to keep himself sharp and to be at his best. But to your point, Ben, the consistency that he's given us and that he's produced throughout pretty much all of his time. His first year was a little bit difficult and a bit of a settling in period. I think we'd all agree with that. But since then, he's been sensational and so adaptable as well, because it's not just the group and the style that we've played today again. It's been very different shapes at different times, and he just finds a way to be ultra effective.
Yeah, Gary, 2 questions for you. The first, regarding Hani, the only other player to win 2 MVPs was Brecky, and that took him, I think, 7 seasons from mid to late 90s to 03, I believe, was the second time he won it. What is it going to take, given that he's already obviously a favorite for this year, to repeat? What is it going to take for them to be a repeat? Is he doing it right now? And the second question is, how do you feel about the VAR, both instances of the VAR, and how they impacted the game in both seasons?
Well, yeah, they're very different questions. So I would throw that back to you, Drake. Of course, I'm always going to say that Hani's in a position where his performances every week put him in that MVP category, because there's such a big reliance on the way that he plays and what he gives the team, certainly in a creative sense. But I've said many, many times, his industry is phenomenal as well, the work that he gets through for the team. So I would ask you guys in the room, because guess what? You're probably going to vote on it. There'll be plenty of people that, get online or don't, and the fans will obviously be voting that way. But I would say absolutely. And what has he got to do? He's just got to maintain this sort of level of performance, which, to Ben's point, he's been able to do for the last 3 years, 2.5 years. If he can maintain that groove and that level, he has to be in the equation, surely. I mean, he's moving in that direction right now. But don't get me wrong, there's some very, very talented players in the league now, and there's still a long way to go. But he's in a great spot, and he's in good form, which is just as important. Sorry, the VAR.
Yeah, in terms of how they impacted the games and the specific circumstances.
Well, I've not been able to see. I saw the first one that was, I think Nima was asked to go and look at the monitor for the possible penalty, and what I saw on our monitor behind us was a forward who was moving at pace, who actually threw his right leg out, and there was a collision. I didn't see a foul. I didn't see. I think it was Josh. I don't think Josh. Was it Jack or Josh? Jack. I didn't think he put his leg out. The guy didn't go over his leg. He ran into Jack. I'm not even sure from what I saw why he was asked to go to the monitor. He'd already seen the foul. VAR is meant to be there for something that is, clear and obvious that is a foul. You've got this wrong, Nima. You might need to go and look at this again. And I couldn't see that anywhere close to that on the monitor behind me. The second goal was a little bit more complicated, I felt. And I'm not talking from what I've seen now, but only what I've been told, that there was a possible foul on Daniel Lovitz. There was a possible handball in there as well that led to that point. And again, I think you've heard it many, many times. If you've got to spend that long looking at the monitor, maybe there were some reasons, but I find it hard to believe that you can pull a goal out of that. I thought it was, it shouldn't have been given. It didn't play into the result today, but complicated, I think, is the word.
Gary, it seems like this team from scouting, they figured out that those big, long, tall balls would not hurt Joe in any way. So it looks like from upstairs that they were more complex in the way they set up the process into the box, so that the ball kept away from Joe. And then that right there, this is what I go like that to ask you about the performance by Josh and Jack defending that type of complex offense tonight.
Well, I honestly thought the first period was a little bit more direct, and they put the two centre-backs under a lot of pressure. And it's not always that first ball that they win. What they do is put the centre-backs under enough pressure that the ball's not cleared with any distance. And they do a tremendous job of picking up the next phase or working into an area that can be productive for them. And that is what they are very, very good at. They're extremely well drilled. So in the first period, I thought there were a couple of times that, by the way, the two youngest centre-backs, I think, that have ever paired in a group that I've had here. And I would say as well, I think I was asked this question earlier in the week, I think anywhere I've ever been. So, a young pairing, two centre-backs that we're missing for different reasons, that are far more mature and maybe physically adept. But I did think in a situation where both of them could have crumbled a little bit. They're under a lot of pressure. I thought Josh held his end up extremely well throughout the game, certainly in general play. The couple of times I felt a little bit uncomfortable with dead balls. I just didn't feel that there was a comfortable nature about the group from dead balls. And whether that was because we were missing someone like Walker, who's a terrific leader in those situations, but they were the only times I really felt as though those younger centre-backs might just not be the first to the ball. And of course the goal comes from that. I think it was Parker that won it centrally. But in general, if you look at what Josh has achieved over the last 3 games that we played, he's incrementally increased his minutes, and I can't believe there's anyone that looked out there and thought he looked out of place, which is credit to the boy.
Yeah, Coach, 10 straight unbeaten, 5 home matches that you've won. Congratulations to that. It's a big achievement record for the club. What could you say to the locker room right now? I'm sure they're very collective. I'm sure there's high energy. What could you say of that group right now?
Well, I do think that the groove that we're in is all about process. It's really about working to the same level every day, every week, and preparing for each game as we have done in the last 18 now. The games that we haven't got maximum points out of, or we've been defeated, have been very, very tight. So there's something that's going right in that process. And the players are very much the driving force behind that, because I think it's easy in these situations where teams are in a good groove and they're in decent form to just come off the gas a little bit and maybe feel as though you're better than you really are. But it is that process that I do believe helps us all work towards the next challenge. Do I believe that this group's good enough to continually challenge this top three or even the top spot? Absolutely. But there are so many things that can go on in these final 16 games, and a lot of them, unfortunately, that might be out of all of our control. And I think the only thing that we can continue doing is what I've just said. Keep looking at the next game, at the next opponent, at the next challenge. Be at our very best for that. Be as focused as we possibly can be for that. And I think the rest of it really takes care of itself.
We have time for one more question. Tim, take us home.
Hey Gary, you let me right into it, but you guys have a quick turnaround. You got 2 back-to-back on the road, going to Montreal and then Columbus. You guys haven't had as many, weekend midweeks this year as you have in past years, but how do you kind of collect yourself after a big game like this and turn around and get ready to face Montreal on Wednesday?
Yeah, well, it actually wasn't that long ago, Tim, that I think we ended up with the Wednesday games in the Cup. I know it's not league play, but that rhythm of preparing and recovering and playing again. I do honestly think that the players, when you're doing well, when you're in decent form, they're just looking forward to the games. They just want to play. It can be a little bit more stressful for the coaches and myself, where you're trying to get the right information out. You're trying to make sure that the group have got the right amount of work and not too much, not too little, where they can get a little bit languid and stiff and not mentally ready for the next challenge. But I think we've seen a couple of those midweek games, and the guys are great. They're a very professional group. They'll get some downtime tomorrow, and we'll have Monday, Tuesday to prepare for Montreal. It'll come around quickly. We've played them once, so there's a little bit of understanding about the group, but I think they're in a very different place to where they were when they came here last, in much, much better form. And I'm sure they'll see that as an opportunity to try and get one over us, but we'll be as ready as we possibly can be.